border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
Throws deep downfield for the end zone, a lunging catch, and it's a score for the Herd, Jerron Woodyard. And it is 37-0, and Grant Wells is moving up toward a 300-yard passing performance in the first half. That is his 4th touchdown toss.
Story toward Jackson, got separation to the 20, to the 10, and he will go. Lucky Jackson from 54 yards out.
Pressure off the edge. Screen delivers. What a catch, Levias, who brings it in. Armani Levias to the house. Touchdown, Marshall.
This will be from 52 yards. From the far hash mark. John Haggerty, the punter, will hold. Jared Nash will snap it. It's definitely long, and there it is. Unbelievable. The true freshman, Corey Munson, hammers it home from 52 yards.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast, brought to you by Monograms and Moonshine Custom Apparel. Find her on Twitter at Monograms, the letter N, Shine, Monograms in Shine. Also has an Etsy store where you can go peruse what's in the store already, and there's a link there if you've got your own idea, something you'd like to see on a shirt, that she'd be happy to work with you and try to get something made. Monograms and Moonshine, custom apparel with a southern twist. So Trace, off the big win from the Moonshine Throwdown, Marshall goes into Bowling Green, Kentucky, gets a very convincing win. Western puts up some points at the end of the game, basically in garbage time, but the backup quarterback did look good. We'll see how that goes later on when, we get to look forward to topper games for the rest of the season. We're going to be previewing UAB with Moff here sometime down the road. But for now, we got to talk about the Herd going down for its first ever trip in the Conference USA era to Ruston, Louisiana, to play Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, usually a Western Division favorite. They're kind of like Marshall. They really mirror one another. They're always in the thick of things, and it just kind of, you never wonder you're never sure if they're ever going to rise all the way to the number one spot or not. But they're always in that like top 2 or 3 teams. So they're always in the thick of it. They're usually really tough. They're usually fielding a very competitive team. But this year, I don't know really what's going on with them. From the stats, they look like they could be pretty lethal. But when you look at the scores and the record, their record's 3-1 on the year, 2-0 in conference. But if you look at the scores, it just doesn't blow you away, specifically in conference play, and specifically who they beaten in conference play. So the Power Index loves the Herd this week. 82.4% chance to win in an away game for the Herd. Herd is minus 14. Hello, minus 14. That's got to be the largest spot Marshall's had in quite a while. I couldn't go off the top of my head, but it's probably been a while since they've been a 14-point favorite, at least against an FBS team. Over-under in this game, if you're into that sort of thing, is 52.5 as we record tonight, which is Monday night. Game's going down Saturday, 10/17, 6 o'clock Eastern on CBS Sports Network. So another pretty good marquee time slot and, I guess, outlet to show the game. So let's talk about Louisiana Tech. All-time series Marshall owns 2-1, 2-0 in the Conference USA area, and both games have been kind of specials for Marshall. First one was the 2014 Conference USA Championship game, which the Herd got a win at home at the Joan. And then last year, they played Louisiana Tech for 75 week at the Joan in a convincing 31-10 win in what we both think was Marshall's most complete game by far all season long. They just were unbelievably good and solid in all 3 phases. Trace, let's talk about Louisiana Tech. What do you know about them this year? What are you looking for this one? We'll talk about some stats, and I got a few tidbits after you throw out some knowledge.
Yeah, it's like you said, Louisiana Tech's always one of the most solid teams in Conference USA. They're very much the Marshall of the West, I think. They're constantly always in that 7, 8, 9 win area, and they're always a division contender, but it seems like ultimately always end up about a game short. But, I don't know if that'll continue this year. But, I mean, just looking at their schedule a little bit more, yeah, I mean, they're 3-1, which looks good. But, like, the fact that Marshall's a 14-point favorite pretty much says that 3-1's a little bit – there might be a little asterisk beside that 3-1 because, I mean, yeah, they beat Southern Miss by 1 point, and the Southern Miss is 1-3. They beat Houston Baptist, and who's 1-3 FCS team, and I think they still gave up like 38 to Houston Baptist. So, like, they're giving up a crap ton of points to everybody. And then they beat UTEP, who's improved, but an improved
UTEP.
I was going to say, but an improved UTEP is still a pretty bad team, probably. So, like, then they barely won that game, and then they got absolutely dismantled against BYU. So, like, they haven't been that great so far. But, I mean, I'm not remotely writing them off at all. I was very surprised that spread was -14. But, I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully they can cover it. Hopefully they can leave no doubt. But I think Louisiana Tech's going to put up a fight. I mean, that's a really long trip there. Marshall's never played there, at least in the Conference USA era, if ever, quite frankly. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough game. I think it'll be tougher than the Moonshine Throwdown ended up being. I hope not, but I hope Marshall just completely blows them out. But, like, I just don't think they'll blow them out. That they will have 2 straight road blowout wins. It's hard for me to fathom that at this point in time. Hopefully they can, and they certainly are capable of doing so. But I would not bet on it, put it that way. So, like, but I mean, Marshall still got the decided advantage in this game, in my opinion. But I think Louisiana Tech will put up a fight.
Yeah, first of all, Marshall has made a trip to Ruston, just not in this Conference USA realigned era since 2014. Actually, there aren't many Herd fans around that will remember the Herd's trip to Ruston the first time because it happened all the way back in 1942. So it's only 3 all-time meetings between these teams. So, like I said, Herd owns the 2-1 advantage in the all-time series. So it's kind of wild to think that these teams have been in the same conference for a number of years and have only met in the regular season once, which was last year. And before that, it took both teams making the Conference USA title game for it to happen. You mentioned that they gave up 38 points to Houston Baptist. That is accurate. They did put 66 on the board, but still. Some of these point totals that they've given up, 45 points to BYU, which BYU's a good team. We're not going to slight them at all. I mean, they're a top 15 team or top 20 team. They're good. They had a little bit of a down week this past weekend. They only won by 7 points at home against UTSA, but they're still a solid team. And you mentioned that they had a 1-point win against Southern Miss, but they still gave up 30. So they won 31-30. So this defense will give up some points. They do give up some yards. As a matter of fact, you know, I had 4 little data points here that I was going to talk about, and we've basically covered them all. The one thing I want to drive home about that is about that UTEP game is they were favored by 14 points to beat UTEP. They ended up winning by 4, and UTEP had 2 turnovers while Louisiana Tech had none. So It looked like they really needed some help to kind of edge out that win. And on top of it all, in that game, Louisiana Tech only put up 210 yards of offense in the entire game. So it just doesn't speak that they're very volatile or very lethal on offense. They seem to be giving up yards and points. So it's not a good recipe when you're facing a team like Marshall that's basically the complete opposite of that right now. They're playing solid defense and they can put points up on the board. But look, anyway you go, we got to feature some players. So let's talk about the guys you have to look out for. They've got a new quarterback in Louisiana Tech at Louisiana Tech, and that seems like it's really been the MO for them outside of what was the quarterback last year? Was it Jamar Smith? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Okay, he was there for a number of years, but I remember Skip Holtz, it was grad transfer QB after grad transfer QB for a number of years. So that seems to be his recipe for good or bad. You know, maybe that's why they're always a game away or 2 games away. I don't know. But they got a new one. He's quarterback number 9, Luke Anthony. He spent the last couple of years at Abilene Christian, so he's stepping up a division and a level to play for the Bulldogs. A 6'1", 210-pound senior, 59 out of 98 on the season, 739 yards, 7.5 yards per completion. He does have 10 touchdown passes through the air, and he's only got 2 interceptions. Here's the kick. He's been sacked 9 times. Okay, so that's not something that you want when you're coming in having to face a defensive line like Marshall has, linebackers like Marshall has, and really the speed in the secondary that Marshall has. They can bring guys from anywhere and get at you, and they do, and they're pretty successful at it. Number 33, a name that we will all know, been in Conference USA for a long time, very productive back. Number 33, Justin Henderson, 5'10", 218-pound senior. Leading rusher for the Bulldogs, 57 attempts, 229 yards, good for 4 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Almost equally as effective, really more effective from a yards per carry standpoint. Number 22, running back Israel Tucker, another senior, 5'8", 200-pounder, 42 carries, 192 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, and also 2 touchdowns on the ground. Then we're going to feature a trio of wide receivers, another senior and a couple of underclassmen. So their playmakers here in Louisiana Tech are really senior heavy, at least on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll start with that senior wide receiver, number 6, Adrian Hardy, 6'2", 205-pounder, 13 catches on the year, 206 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, 15.8 yards per reception. He's your leader in yardage. Now the leader in receptions and touchdowns is this first gentleman here, number 5. Love the name, by the way. Wide receiver Smoke Harris.
Yeah.
The 5'6", 184-pounder, 16 catches on the year, 169 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 10.6 yards per catch. And the last one we're going to feature is wide receiver number 86, Wayne Toussaint, the 5'9", 163-pound sophomore. 7 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 18.6 yards per catch. All in all, this offense averages 234 pass yards per game, 127 rush yards per game. So that begs the question, Trace. What are we going to see this Marshall defense do to counteract what this Louisiana Tech offense is bringing to the table?
Well, I'd like to think that they could make them one-dimensional in a lot of ways, and that's one of my little spoiler here. That's one of my points of victory is I think Marshall needs to make them one-dimensional. I think if they take away the run, which they've been doing, then they will have a lot more success trying to defend what they will do through the air. And it looks like so far, although they do have some good running backs, I mean, that Henderson especially, I remember him last year really impressed me against Marshall, but it seems like they're more of a passing team. I mean, the quarterback's numbers lends itself to thinking that. And then they have receiver talent. I mean, so like I think that Louisiana Tech will be more maybe an aerial team than, say, Western Kentucky was, obviously. But, I mean, that still doesn't mean that it's going to be tough to take away the pass. I think that you have to, if you're Marshall, if you can just take away the run like they've been doing, hold them to under 100 yards rushing or however many it would be, then that means you can drop more guys back into coverage and be more prepared for what they're going to try to do. So I think that's what Marshall needs to do. I mean, of course, it'd be great if they just took everything away, but that's probably not going to happen. So, I mean, if you had to pick one or the other, I would say take away the run because that will be able to, that way you'll be able to really, really do some work through the secondary and drop a lot of guys back into coverage. So that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I tend to agree with you a little bit. I think Marshall at this point has proven that they can stop a run attack. And I don't want to say without trying, but they're just so darn good that they're just good at stopping a run attack. They don't really have to emphasize it. You know what I mean? They just kind of do it. But I don't know that the coverage is the way to go here. With the team speed that Marshall has on defense, it seems like the recipe for victory is to get after Luke Anthony and make him beat you with somebody constantly in his face or moving him off of his spot or getting lick after lick on him, like keeping him in an uneasy situation all night long because, hey, 9 sacks given up just on this guy. They've given up 11 as a team. So that means the backup's been sacked twice. And he doesn't really have any stats of notability, but he's been gotten to twice. So 11 sacks to a handful of games. I mean, the offensive line isn't that stout. I mean, they're good, but they're also a little bit porous if you're giving up 11 sacks to a handful of games. Yeah. So Darius Hodge, Cumberlander, those guys might have the game that we've been waiting to see them combine to have this week. This kind of lends itself to that. You said they're a little more pass heavy. Hell yeah, they're a little bit more pass heavy to the tune of 107 yards more passing than rushing every week. So yeah, we could count on a heavy dose of the pass game. And look, you're going to force them into that. Marshall's been really good at scoring early and scoring often. So if you force them into passing situations to try to play catch up, then that's what they're going to have. They won't have the luxury of trying to run the ball to catch back up. So look, I like the matchup here. I think Marshall's defense is just set up to have another pretty solid game. if they just continue to play Marshall defense. So let's talk about some of these Bulldog defenders. And to their credit, there's a lot of guys with a lot of stats, but generally this early in the season, that means that they're on the field for a lot of plays and they're giving up a lot of points because, if you're not doing that stuff, you're probably standing over there watching your offense. So, but to their credit, we've featured a lot of teams here, and their safeties and defensive backs are leading the team in tackles, and that's not the story here with Louisiana Tech. Top tackler on the season, number 52 linebacker Tyler Grubbs, 6'1", 221-pound. Check it out, freshman. 42 total tackles, leading the team. 14 of those solo, has a forced fumble, and a pass defended. Second leading tackler, linebacker, number 46, Ezekiel Barnett, 6'2", 207-pound senior, 28 total tackles, 16 of those solo, almost half of what the leading tackler has. I mean, this Tyler Grubbs must be all over the field all the time. Third leading tackler, number 3, linebacker Trey Baldwin, 6'2", 233-pound senior, 23 total tackles, 12 of those solo, and 3 passes defended. Then we're going to feature a couple of an interior lineman and somebody from the secondary, but also they just happen to be the 4th and 5th leading tacklers as well. I just went looking for the guy who's the leading sack man and who has the interceptions, and, well, turned out to be the 4th and 5th leading tackler. Number 97, defensive lineman Milton Williams, 6'4", 278-pound junior, 17 total tackles, 8 of those solo, 3 sacks leads the team for the Bulldogs, and 1 fumble recovery. Lastly, a defensive back, number 4, B.J. Williamson, 6'1", 185-pound sophomore, 22 total tackles, 12 of those solo. He has 1 interception and 1 pass defended. All in all, I think there's 3 total team interceptions by 3 different guys on this Bulldogs defense, and a couple of guys have a sack, but there's no notable, 3's good. I'm not trying to say it's not, but as a team, it's not like they have 12 and this guy has 3 of them. You know what I mean? That's like they have 5 and this guy has 3 of them. So they're allowing roughly 300 pass yards per game, only giving up 118 rush yards per game as a defense, which is pretty solid. It's kind of strength on strength. Marshall run game versus Louisiana Tech rush defense in this one. What do you think we're going to see this Marshall offense try to do?
What they're really good at, pounding the living crap out of the football with Brendan Knox and Sheldon Evans. That's what I think we're going to see. Now, by the same token, Louisiana Tech is not good against the pass, which you can see by their numbers. So, like, Grant Wells could have a maybe Eastern Kentucky-esque game, perhaps. But, like, how do you even remotely try to do anything, or how do you try to do something other than running the ball with Brendan Knox, or at least not to that level? I mean, you have to just establish that run because there's such a weapon. The O-line's such a weapon. It makes life easy. I mean, it's easy. And if they can get that run game going, I really like their chances because that will open up the pass, and that will open up the pass against a poor secondary from the looks of it, based on the games they played so far. So Marshall could, if they can get the run game going, they could end up putting a lot of points in this game, perhaps. So I think it has to start there. I think it'll start there with every team that they play from here on out, just because they know it's the biggest weapon that's probably the biggest weapon of any team in Conference USA is the Marshall's offensive line opening up running lanes for Brendan Knox. I mean, I don't think any Conference USA team is prepared for that. So,
yeah. I mean, why would you do anything than what you do best first? So it just makes sense to come out and pound the ball with Knox, Evans. I mean, even McDaniel, Gaines, the speed off the edge with on the end arounds with Willie Johnson. I mean, why not stretch them out and see what they can do? And Marshall's got a lot of speed at a lot of positions. There have been teams that we thought would hold that Marshall run game in check a little bit better than they were able to. And of course, I'm talking about Western Kentucky. I think that was the best defensive line that they're going to face in conference, period. And there's really not a close second, in my opinion. And Marshall was able to run basically at will. So facing a team that, they've got a lot of stats. They've got a lot of tackles along the defensive line and the linebacking core, but it just means you're on the field for a lot of plays, guys. That means teams are moving the chains on you. Tavonte Beckett is a tackling machine, and there are a lot of guys in the secondary for Marshall that have a few tackles here and there, but G-Money, Christmas, they're getting off the field. So if you're giving up, 33 points a game, which is basically what this team is doing, They're giving up 33. Wait a minute. They're giving up 32.5 points a game, and they're scoring 33 points a game. That's what Louisiana Tech is averaging, beating their opponent by half a point this year. So that is not a recipe for a victory against the Herd. Is it possible? Sure it is. Anything's possible because you never know what's going to happen. But they are going to give up yards. I don't think Grant Wells has to go out and have a 300-yard day. It just means it's there for the potential to happen. I mean, he's making big plays anyway. You know, they just may not be finding the end zone right now. So let's just skip right to it and talk about what your points to victory. What's the Herd got to do to get a win in this game?
Well, the very first one I alluded to earlier, I'm going to go ahead and say it again, is make them one-dimensional offensively. I mean, if Marshall can do that, then I think their defense is going to have a lot of success in this game. I mean, we know how dominant they are against the run, so if they can keep that up, then I don't really know if Louisiana Tech is capable of putting up enough points, especially if you just completely take away one facet of their offense, that you can't just go the whole game throwing the ball. I mean, you can't have success like that against this Marshall defense, I don't feel like. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess if you wanted to flip-flop that, if you take away the pass and give them the run, I still think Marshall will have success because I just think their defense is so well-rounded thus far. So just make them one-dimensional. That would be pretty big in this one, I think. So we'll see if that happens or not. Next point is they got to keep playing clean football. Marshall's been playing really clean the first 3 games of the year. Hardly no turnovers. Didn't have any turnovers against Western. I don't even know if they had a turnover against the Eastern Kentucky. I can't remember exactly, but there have been very few turnovers so far this year. Like maybe 1 or 2 at the most. So like Marshall has to keep playing like that. And there hasn't been a whole lot of penalties. That's been another good thing. I mean, yeah, they've had a few, but there has not been an overabundance of penalties so far. So they need to keep that going. They just need clean football. And I think if you play clean, if you just take care of that aspect, then you're already a leg up right there, especially on the road at a place you've never played before. So that would be big in this one as well. Next point is, this is probably going to be a point in most every preview, win the trenches. Just win the trenches because that's what Marshall's the best at. That's what they're best at in Conference USA. Their offensive line is going to move bodies. I mean, that's just the way it is. They're going to protect Grant Wells. The D-lines and linebackers could have a field day against that Louisiana Tech offensive line that's giving up a lot of sacks. So if they can win the trench, they're sitting pretty. So there's no doubt about it. If they can do that, then Louisiana Tech's probably in deep. So win the trenches.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
I want to cut you off there for a second. You mentioned about the turnovers. I was looking that up, so I want to clarify it for you. Only 1 interception, of course, by Grant Wells. No fumbles on the year, but we did see that turnover on downs against Appalachian State late in the game where they were just trying to seal the game away. Just ultimately didn't, factor in the game. We saw the peanut punch later on, and it was over. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I wanted you to know there was only 1 turnover for the Herd on the year.
That's pretty unheard of in its own right. I mean, we know how bad Marshall can get with turnovers, so hopefully it doesn't rear its ugly head again here. And then my last point, which is exactly what they did against Western Kentucky, I wrote down, put them in a hole early. If Marshall can do that, I don't know if Louisiana Tech. This is not a team. Marshall is not a team. They don't have a defense that lends itself to you being able to come back from a big deficit. It's not a defense that you're going to be able to come back on very, very often, if any. So, like, if Marshall gets a lead, 14-0, 21-0, that could be the game because, I mean, we've seen that. We just saw that against Western. When Marshall gets a big lead, that defense is not going to let the other team back in it. I mean, I just don't see it happening. So, if they can put them in a hole early, now, I mean, Louisiana Tech could very well come out and jump on Marshall real quick too. Maybe put up a couple touchdowns quick or something. I wouldn't predict that, but Marshall really needs to try that, especially on the road here. I mean, back-to-back road games, which 2 road games that I thought were probably going to be their toughest of the year so far haven't. I mean, Western obviously was an easy win, and this one, some people think it'll be an easy win. So they need to really go out there and play sharp from the start like they have been doing. That would be huge in this one. So put them in a hole early, and Marshall could hopefully have enough to be able to hold them off the rest of the game.
So putting them in a hole early is something that Marshall's been good at because we haven't mentioned this once this whole season. Now, of course, we're not going to do it after the first game. Probably didn't notice it after the second game, but now we're 3 games in for the Herd. Herd scored on its opening possession all 3 games. I'm talking about a touchdown. I just wanted to make sure they did, in fact, do that against Eastern Kentucky, and they did, because I knew they went right down the field to match App State, and I knew they went down the field in 40 seconds to score against Western this past Saturday. So, yeah, all 3 games.
They never trailed so far.
No, I did see that. They have never trailed in the game, in a game, so – at some point they're going to have to face some adversity, and they're going to have to come back, and they're going to be in a hole and have to do something. So, we know that's going to happen, but it's pretty impressive that Marshall has been able to score on its opening possession all 3 games of the season. So they've been really good at playing ahead. Yeah. My points of victory are very simple. Number 1, all I wrote down was run. Do I really need to explain that? That's what they're great at. So do it until you can't do it anymore, or do it until you don't want to do it anymore. Whatever. Just run. You've got at least 3 capable backs, and we know that Lawrence Papillon has also played in the past, and he just isn't getting as many carries this year, but Marshall goes really deep at running back, at least 4 guys. We know all about Knox. We know all about Evans. Knowledge McDaniel got a little bit of play late in the Western Kentucky game, and we've seen Papillon get carries in last season. So they go 4 deep at least. Number 2, here's what I said earlier about it's kind of piggybacking off what I said about defense. I think they need to emphasize the pass rush this week, because they have run defense kind of locked down. Everybody knows where to be and what to do, and they're just really good at it. So a little bit of extra emphasis on the pass rush, a little bit of extra emphasis on putting pressure on that quarterback, getting him off his spot so that he doesn't make necessarily the best decisions or can't make the most accurate throws. So maybe a tipped ball, or the guys can just jump a route or something like that. I mean, we saw Stephen Gilmore almost pick one off against Western Kentucky, just couldn't haul it in. I mean, the guys are there. They swarm. Every time it seemed like a Western receiver was getting the ball in the flat or on a short pass, there were 7 guys swarming to him like immediately. So this team speed on Marshall's defense is pretty amazing. One screw up and the ball's going the other way. So number 3, I wrote stay hype. This Marshall team just needs to stay hyped up. They're playing with a lot of juice right now. Yes. They're feeding off of one another's energy. I mean, it's really fun to watch. If you're a Herd fan, it's got to be super fun to watch, because these guys are just hyped up. They're having a lot of fun. You can tell they're enjoying themselves. During timeouts and late in the game against Western Kentucky, when that game was basically in hand, they're playing songs over the PA system at the stadium, and the guys are dancing. I mean, even the ones on the field, they're in the huddle and they're dancing. So they're having a good time. They're having fun playing football, and really that's what it's all about. So just stay hype. And the last thing I said is this is more of an attitude thing to win for me, not what you got to do. 2 points, run, emphasize the pass rush. The last 2 are kind of attitude things. Number 4 is finish every snap. And we saw that against Western Kentucky. They went play for play and played through the whistle. They didn't just play to the whistle. They're just not running into guys. They're trying to run through guys on defense. They're not just trying to get that first down. They're trying to get to the end zone every time. So finish every single play. It's an attitude thing. And you mentioned it earlier. Take care of the little things, play clean football. That's attention to detail. And if you do that sort of stuff, you seem to catch the breaks. Opportunity seems to favor you, and we've seen Marshall get that this year. So if they can keep that up, keep taking care of the small things, then that's how championships are won. We know it's really, really early to be saying that word, but if you develop those habits now and continue them all season, that's when you might look up at the end of the year hoisting a trophy. Let's talk about a 200 proof player, Trace. Who's your guy this week for the Herd at Louisiana Tech?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about how Louisiana Tech's been pretty bad against the pass so far this year, giving up about, I think it's 300 yards passing a game. So Brock Thompson in this game, I think he's real strong this year. Really like the game he made some 2 games as well. His speed is just so evident. He's just so quick and shifty. I mean, there was a play that he made in the Western game where he kind of made Devin Key look pretty foolish. I don't remember exactly when it was, but he caught the ball, made a move, got past him, which is hard to do. So Brock Thompson, I think he could have a really big game in this one, especially going against a perceived weaker secondary. And, I mean, of course, Grant Wells is going to have to do his part, but I think Brock Thompson could have a really big game here. Hopefully it's his best game of the year. I'd like to see him get a touchdown, maybe 2. I don't know. But big game I could see coming from Brock Thompson for sure.
I think Brock Thompson has cemented himself as the guy on the outside for the Herd this year. Through 3 games, he's been that deep ball threat. I mean, we've seen Xavier Gaines catch big gains down the middle and make big plays as well. But as far as that outside receiver, it looks like Brock Thompson has separated himself from everyone else to play that role. So that's a good pick. I think I'm going to go on the defensive side this week just because I feel like Marshall has the potential to get to the quarterback 4 or 5 times even. I mean, it's just kind of feels that way this week. This defense is coming off of a stellar performance against Western Kentucky. You're going against a team that's kind of pass heavy, so we know that they solidify the run already really well. So this just means like I kind of feel like Darius Hodge is my guy this week. I like to see him get to the quarterback maybe 2.5 times, get credited, 2.5 sacks. But I'm just going defense this week. I go to offense way too often. This feels like a game where, Darius Hodge could have a big game. Maybe 2 weeks in a row defensive player of the week for the Herd. We'll see. What do you got for a score prediction, Trace?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be nearly as smooth of a game as some think, or even the odds makers think, and I don't think it'll be as easy as the Western game or the Eastern Kentucky game. But I'm going to say Marshall wins 34-24. I think that the defense will give up their most amount of points so far this year. I don't even think they're going to play bad. I just think eventually they will give up more than 7 points a game. I mean, it's going to happen. So I feel like this will be a game where that could happen. I mean, it's on the road against a pretty good team from the West, far trip, all the way out to Ruston, Louisiana. Louisiana Tech's always solid. They have a pretty good offense, it looks like. So, I mean, I don't feel like Marshall's going to be able to completely shut them down. I think they'll give up 24-ish. And then, of course, the offense, though, I feel like they'll have a pretty good day. I mean, Louisiana Tech's not got a very good defense. I think Brendan Knox could have a big game, 150 yards maybe. I could see Grant Wells throwing 300 plus or 250 plus. I mean, I could see it being a really big day offensively for Marshall, even though, if you want to look at it, if they had a really big day offensively, you would think they would score more than 34, but I think 34, if Marshall can put up 34 in this game, I think that wins the game for sure. If they put up 28 points, that probably wins the game. So, I think if they can just get anywhere in that area, that they are in really good shape to win the game. So I'm going to say Marshall 34-24, which would not cover technically.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got them with a 14-point win, but I've got a little bit lower scoring than you do. I like the Herd defense to kind of stifle a little bit what Louisiana Tech likes to do or is wanting to do. Give me the Herd 27-13. I'm not even sure that all those points will come on the offensive side. We might see another defensive score, and that's not to say that the offense can't put up 27 on its own, because it most certainly can. I just get the feeling that Marshall's defense is going to harass and cause problems to the point that Louisiana Tech's going to be uneasy, and they didn't have very much success against BYU when they played. So, BYU's a tough team, and I don't know. BYU just manhandled them 45-14. I mean, I don't like it that bad, but if Marshall scores on some long runs early, it could get to that 45-14, 45-20 type thing. But I'm just not, taking into consideration there's going to be some fluky broken off plays that just have big games. Give me the Herd 27-13. All right, Trace, final thoughts time. What do you got this week before we get the heck out of here?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really big game for Marshall. I mean, conference standings aside, if they win this game, they're probably back in the top 25. So there's a lot at stake in this game. I mean, they're sitting at number 26 right now in the AP. If they win, especially if they win convincingly, there's no way you can keep them out. I mean, there's no way. And especially if a team ahead of them loses, then they're sitting right there for a top 25 ranking. But, I mean, you have to take care of business here. I mean, it's going to be a tougher game. I really, truly believe it's going to be a tougher game than what they've been having, or at least they had this past game. So it's not going to be an easy one. They're going to have to play really well. I mean, Louis not going to just lay down for them. They're going to fight. I mean, they haven't been overly impressive so far this year, but they are still 3-1. And their only loss is to a top 15 or 20 team. If you look at it like that, then they don't look that bad. But, I mean, yeah, you're right, though, and I mentioned it too. Like, when you look at their scores and their games a little closer, they haven't been very impressive this year. I mean, they really should have lost that this game. I mean, they really probably should have lost that one. They won in the last few seconds, and whatever. So that one could have lost to UTEP if UTEP hadn't turned the ball over. So like, they are what they are. We don't really not sure quite what they are yet, but this will be a good indicator of how good Louisiana Tech is, and it could also be a good indicator of how good Marshall is. And we think Marshall's pretty daggone good, but eventually they're going to have some adversity. It's like you said. Eventually they're going to have some adversity. You're not every game winning by 20 or 30. It's not going to happen. 14 had 2 or 3 games with adversity. So every great team has it. I think this game will have some of it, but I say Marshall still is the better team here. I think they are. I think they got more talent. I think they got a much better overall well-rounded team than Louisiana. So I think that will pay dividends, hopefully. But the only way they will get themselves in trouble if they start turning again. They haven't turned the ball over this year, but if they start that crap up again, then this game's going to be a long one, and it's going to be extremely difficult to win. So Marshall really needs to get this win, get back in that top where they deserve to. They never deserved in the first place. So prove the doubters wrong, prove the nation that you're a top 25 team. This is their chance right here.
Yeah, one game for sure that Marshall's fans are going to want to pay attention to is this Wednesday night, October 14th, coming up just a couple days. That's undefeated 3-0 Coastal Carolina going down and facing undefeated number 21 Louisiana in a Sun Belt showdown. Somebody's coming out with an L, so one more undefeated team will definitely drop off this year or this week. Another couple of games that you might want to pay attention to as far as the top 25 is concerned would be, I guess your best chances maybe would be Boston College going into Virginia Tech and getting an upset. I don't know how to feel about that. I can't speak intelligently on that at all. And really the only one that you might see, it would be if UK can come up with a win against Tennessee. Tennessee sitting at number 18.
Possible.
Anything's possible, but those are really the lower, but like bottom 15 of the 25, 15 through 25 that are most on, most at risk, I guess. I don't know. But if Coastal Carolina goes in and beats number 21 Louisiana, the Herd's going to get in, and Coastal might jump over Marshall and get that top 25 spot and keep them at 26. Who knows?
Wouldn't doubt it.
But look, as far as Louisiana Tech goes, I'm confident in this game for the Herd, but I am not overly confident because Louisiana Tech always fields a solid team, and it seems like it's just a matter of time before they work a few kinks out and solidify a few areas to where they're going to make a run in conference. I mean, look, they've run through the gauntlet right now, and they're 2-0 in conference, and it doesn't matter if they're 2-0 by 5 points or 2-0 by 50 points. They're still 2-0. So this is not going to be an easy one. A whole brand new venue for the Herd. No player on the current roster has been to Ruston. It's just a new experience. So I like the Herd in this one. I just don't think they should be super cocky. Just play Herd football that they're playing in 2020. Aggressive defense, killer run game. Grant Wells moves the chains when he has to or when he can. And look up at the scoreboard at the end of the day. See what you got. So, Trace, let's get the hell out of here this week. We'll have your Western Kentucky at UAB preview coming up real soon. But until next time, I will take Steven's part, and Trace will lead us out of here or finish it off. So go Tops, Trace.
Go Herds.
It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.